Seth Thompson from Blizzard Entertainment. Come on, round of applause. In a circular motion.
Thank you. Okay, so basically what I'm going to be showing you guys is non-Blizzard work, just some of my personal artwork, and I'm going to try and do a full sculpting demo for the entire hour. So I'm going to try and speed through this thing and show you guys some new features from panel loops and see-through mode, as well as how to do some extrusions on assets, everything within ZBrush. So basically what you're seeing here, this is a recent personal piece that I completed. This is called Unmystified. It's a tribute piece to the video game Uncharted 2. So I loved that video game. It was just amazing. Character work was great, but since I love environments, the environment work totally blew me away, and I wanted to do kind of my own little inspired piece based off that universe. So this is what I got. And also too, while I was working on this, it was also in development for the World of Warcraft, Pandaria cinematic. So if you guys have seen that, it was very heavily influenced with Chinese architecture. So you see a lot of like the Chinese dragons and different things up here in the background. So this is a 5K render, so I'll just zoom into a couple little places in here so you can see some of the details. What we're going to be demoing today is this lantern. I'm going to show you how you can pretty much make this thing, if I'm lucky, within an hour. Using the new features that we have, and we'll probably do this one because I don't have to do the little legs coming off it, so it'll be a little bit faster. And let me just show you a close-up render of that lantern. This is the piece. You can see there's a lot of different little details in here, everything else. Interesting thing about this is, originally when I was going to add this to my scene, I was going to do something that was much more simplified, probably just like 1 or 2 straight pieces, not a whole lot of intricate work. And I decided to go ahead and go really crazy once I saw what panel loops was capable of when 4 or 5 came out. Jumped in there, and now I'm just going to show you the process for that. So let's go ahead and get started. And this is already kind of set up the way that I like. So what I want to show you guys is basically just starting from here, going my transpose mode. I dragged out a cylinder. I'm going to do Shift F for polyframe. I'll probably be giving you guys a breakdown of all the processes I'm doing in depth at the beginning, and then I'm going to start speeding through with hotkeys, so bear with me. One thing that a lot of artists don't use a lot is this initialize section down here. This is super useful. I'm just going to turn down these divides here, and then I'm going to also put 6 sides on this piece because our lantern has 6 sides to it. And I'm going to create our entire lantern from this one piece right here. And before I get started, I know I want to have like 3 pieces out of this, so I'm going to duplicate this 3 times. Before they do that, up here at the top, see-through mode, I'm going to use this so I can see behind my image, see my lantern, and I can roughly kind of size my cylinder to this. And for now, I'm just going to size the cylinder in the viewport based off of just the core shape here. And I'm going to be using the Deformation Tools quite a bit going through here. I'm going to switch this to my Z-axis. I'm just going to scale that up a little bit. Move that, and I think that's pretty good enough for now. And I want this front face facing forward. What this is going to become is it's going to become this front section here. I'm going to split this into 3 different parts. I'm going to create a front piece here. I'm going to create a little pie wedge for the lid, and then I'm going to create a bottom piece, all from that cylinder. So to start off with, let's make this Polymesh 3D, so now it's active and I can work with it. We're about to duplicate this 3 times, so Control-Shift-D, you can duplicate, you see that happen down here, or you can just come down here in the panel and duplicate it this way. I'm going to isolate only one of these, and what I want to do now is I'm going to use my Marquee tool, Control-Shift-Alt, so that I can hide the stuff I don't want to see. And first off, I'm going to just isolate this little top that's going to become my lid, Control-Shift-Alt, and now we have only this top piece. If we go down here underneath Geometry, Modify Topology, I'm going to delete Hidden, and now I can subdivide this and it doesn't have to worry about any other mesh. It's now only this top piece. So I'm going to move on to my next section here. This is going to become my front piece. Once again, I'm going to isolate the different sections here because I only want this front piece. So now you can see we only have the front section here. And later this will be duplicated around 6 times. And then finally for this bottom piece, this is going to become the base of our lantern. And let me just switch to Photoshop here. That's going to become this piece in a minute. So I'm just going to size that down a little bit to prep for what I'm going to do here shortly. Once again, using our deformation tools. And the reason I like to use these deformation tools a lot in a situation like this is because my axis for the object is already set at the center of world space. And for me, this is really important because later we're going to be doing a bunch of different types of symmetry, such as radial symmetry, which is really dependent on making sure that your established pivot point's at the center of an object. So I'm just going to move this down really quick. Once again, using deformation tool. I could move it with my transpose, but I do not want to risk moving my axis center. So eventually later this will become the base of my object. For now, let's just work on this middle section. Just so I don't bore you guys to death at the beginning, I'm going to give you a quick demo of what the panel loops feature is going to do for us. I'm going to turn off smooth before I duplicate this since it doesn't have any supporting geometry around the edge. Oops, I forgot to delete hidden geo in the back. That's what will happen if you don't do this. So now we've got that. It's only this front piece. And I'm going to give this a bunch of subdivisions so we get something smooth. Let's do one more. That feels pretty good. I'm going to delete lower because we need to make sure there's no topology on this when I'm using panel loops. And I'm also going to turn on my activate symmetry mode, which can be done with X. I'll show you in here for once or twice to do it this way so you get familiar with it. So now we can make our own little DNA chain or whatever. So before I go through and show you what I want to do here, I'm going to make a couple duplicates of this piece. Control-Shift-D. I'm making 3 pieces, and I'll show you why in a minute. First off, just so you can know what I'm planning to do here, using something like this, I'm going to show you how you can make a bunch of shapes really quick. I'm going to sharpen my mask with Control-Shift-Click, and basically just come up here underneath Geometry, Edge Loop, you expand that. You'll see this new feature, Panel Loops. That's been here since 4.05. Before I do this, I need to make a poly group, so the hotkey for that is Control-W, and if I do Shift-F to see my poly frame, you can see we actually have a poly frame in here now. I'm going to Control-Shift-Click this to hide and isolate this, so now we have nothing on the outside. Once again, that GEO modified topology, I'm going to delete hidden because I don't want all of this extruding. And now, let's just come in here. If we hit the panel loops, you can see it's actually extruding a bit in here. It's just too small right now, so let's turn up this thickness. And now you can see it's actually getting a bit bigger. And one other thing I want to show you, and this is important later to keep our symmetry working. Notice how it's just coming out from here towards the front. Oops, that's what happens if you do it twice. If you change this elevation right here to 0, you'll notice now it goes front and back. This is what I want, because later if I want to sculpt on this side and have it appear on the other side, you can activate that. The other thing to take a quick look at is you see how we have this nice bevel here. This is not what I want really for my lantern because I want it to feel more like cast metal and soft around the edges. This is all controlled down here in this bevel profile. So I'm going to undo this, and you can see now it's literally, it was just following this shape. So you could come here, reset this, and now we can just drag out our own, like let's say we want it to be a little bit more curved around the edge here. And this top one I don't want anymore, let's drag it off. You could actually adjust the size of this to affect the influence if you need to. But for me, I think this looks pretty good. I'm going to run this one more time. Now you can see it's a little bit more smoothed out around the edges. So that's the name of the game. I'm going to be doing this over and over in this presentation. And but before I went in there and made all my shapes over a few minutes and you guys get bored, I wanted to show you what it can actually do. So let's delete that out of here. And now we'll start working on our actual piece. Go into see-through mode here so we can see our asset underneath. I'm going to switch to Photoshop a second because I just want to zoom in on this a bit. Now I'm just going to use the features you saw a minute ago with the masking to start tracing out different portions of this asset layer. And I'm going to do this in 3 different subtools. The reason why is I want to isolate this shape, this top piece. I also want to, you can see this is like, feels like it's coming up just a little bit. I can control this really easily by making a couple different shapes. So first off, I'm just going to mask by Control-Shift grabbing to get this nice marquee tool by default. I'm going to do that and isolate some of my sections. And I think my symmetry is turned on. So if I mask one section over here, you'll notice it masks on the other side as well. Let's just turn that back up. And I'm going to once again Control W to make a new poly group. Control Shift click, so I isolate just the section I want here. And I'm going to delete out that hidden geo because I don't want that in. Modify topology, delete it. So now we have one of our sections of this. Next, I'm going to make a little circle section you see here as well as this. I'm going to keep my symmetry turned on. I'm just going to draw out this shape pretty quickly. It's really soft at the moment, but I'm going to refine it. And to invert the mask selection so I can cut out some parts, do Control-Shift click and get a little bit sharper edge in here on some of these pieces. And up here, this needs to feel a little bit more geometric. I'll add in a bit more shape and then delete out where I don't need it. An asset like this, when I was working on my personal piece, I wasn't too worried about seeing it super close up, so I didn't spend a lot of time being really precise on all these edges. Control-Shift click in the middle of that mask, and then you can sharpen it. And by inverse, if you just Control-click, you'll see that it does a blur on it. So Control-Shift click, got a nice dark mask here. And once again, I'm going to make a poly group out of this. Control-W, and you can see we got that. Control-Shift click that to isolate it, and I'm going to delete my hidden geo again. And then we have one more section. This is going to take a little bit longer, and I promise after this that the presentation is not as boring. So I'm going to switch from here, from this kind of masking tool, to a mask lasso. This allows me to get some really quick shapes in here that I'm liking. And one thing I'm noticing already is, I think with this one I want to have a little bit more resolution. So I'm going to clear this mask. I'm going to subdivide one more time, Control D. And now we have a nice crisp edge. The thing about it though is Panel Loops is really smart at creating super clean geo even with tons of pixelated topology. So although I like to spend the time on this to get some more precise shapes, it's not really necessary. You can go with super low topology, and it's fun just to try out the different settings and see how blurred out your mask is and how crisp and nice the topology can turn out. I guess while I'm doing this, one of the reasons that I decided to actually make this lantern for this piece is I was thinking about doing a night rendering of the piece. I haven't done that yet. I think maybe I will if I have some time, but getting married in September, I don't have a whole lot of free time at the moment after this demo, or I'm going to get in trouble. And originally I was thinking about doing this in one of my standard packages. I like to use Max the most for all my personal work, and it was pretty daunting. I was intimidated by trying to actually poly model this entire thing. So one of the things I like to do with my personal pieces of art is use it as an opportunity to explore new techniques and tutorials that I can then bring back to my team at Blizzard. And this piece in particular, the unmystified one, I got to learn so many different things because it took so long to do it that by the time I was done, that ZBrush 4R4 was when I started, and then 4R6 was out when I completed. So I think I was probably working on this thing off and on for about a year. Just 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, whenever I had time to work on it, sometimes a couple hours on the weekend. I'm just going to add a little bit more shape to some of these sections here so that we can fill out that the blank areas. And Control Shift, click this, sharpen this mask, and I think that looks pretty cool. So once again, I made my poly group, Control Shift click, isolate this, and we'll go back down here one more time. Delete hidden. It's telling me that I need to get rid of my subdivision. This only works if you deleted all your subdivision levels. As far as I know, it does anyways. Okay, so now if we look here, you can see that we kind of have the outline of what's going to become this section here. So let's go ahead and just panel loop this stuff out so we get some nice details. I'm going to start with this top piece, and I'm going to give this a pretty good thickness to it. So once again, come under Geometry, Edge Loop, Panel Loop section down here. I'm going to make sure that I turn my elevation to 0, and I'm going to turn the thickness. You got to be careful. Anything above like 0.5, you're going to start getting pretty strong. So for this piece, I think this is pretty good. And you'll notice it's softening out a little bit around the edges here. I want this to feel a little more crisp, so I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to turn this polish down to 0, and now it retains the sharpness. That can be really handy, especially if you're doing hard surface modeling. So I like this. This thickness feels good to me. Let's go ahead and do another piece. This piece I want to actually have coming out a little further on top. So I'm going to go to my Transpose Tools for a second, pressing W as my hotkey, click this, and it automatically chooses the surface that I want. And I'm just going to pull this out just a tiny bit. Let's just visually look at this. Cool. Here we go. And on this one, I'm going to turn the elevation down. Once again, thickness around here. And it looks like I didn't delete the hidden geometry on this piece. So if you see all that additional stuff come through, that's because you forgot to do this. Alright, cool. And that sits a little bit above the surface up here, which is what I want. I'm going to pull it out even further. And then final piece I'll do is this one. I want this to set back a little bit further. I'm going to once again turn my elevation down here. Thickness, I'm not going to go too high. It's coming out a little further than I want, but I do like the thickness, so I'm just going to use that and shift that back a little bit. That feels about right, but I need to make sure that these two are connected here. I'm going to alt-click to select this sub-tool, and click here to go to my Move tool, or just any of them. Now I'm going to move that back just a tiny bit. Cool. Alright, that's most of the boring stuff. So now I'm going to start adding some details to this. The first thing I'm going to work with, I think, will be, let's do this piece. And then I'm going to isolate this so that I don't see my other subtools as I'm working on it. I'm going to switch to my standard brush, scale that down. I'm going to keep my symmetry activated.
That's because just kind of like just the way that I kind of found myself kind of like.
Here in my see-through mode, I can see that I've got what looks to be like a little kind of lotus pattern going on, all that. I will probably try and do that a little bit, but I'm not going to worry about getting every single detail right. I just want to get a cool pattern going on. So one thing I like to do is under stroke, I turn off this lazy mouse. And now I can get this a little bit sharper. I'm going to turn down my Z intensity because that's really strong at the moment. And once again, I'm always thinking about how I'm going to see this thing in context in the camera. Chances are in cinematic, if I was doing this for Blizzard, it'd probably be a background asset and I wouldn't have to get in super close. So you can get in, make the basic forms, not have to worry too much about what you're going to see in between. Meaning, chances are the director's not going to want to go in and put the camera right on top of this. Alright, got some of the basic forms. This is really simple. But you get the idea. The important thing is just to think how we're going to see it in context. So it might be seen like this in the end. And maybe while we still got symmetry activated, I'll switch to the damn standard brush. And let's just add a couple little interesting shapes here to give it a little bit more definition. Feels a bit more organic. I still got kind of these funky edges here because I didn't do that smoothing part that I showed you earlier with the bevel edge. But in the end, I'm going to Dynamesh this thing and it's going to smooth out, so I'm not too worried about that. So now this is starting to come together. I'm going to do one more thing with this top piece here. I'm actually going to go back to our Deformation Tools and run a quick relax on this. That feels a little bit more like welded metal. And I'm going to use our Lasso Tool and mask out a certain area of this that I want to bring up. I'm going to turn off my symmetry with X. Basically what I'm doing here is I just want part of this to feel like it's going to be overlapping the other surface so that we get a little more 3D in this. Now we just got this front portion. I'm going to invert the mask, control click, and then I'm going to use our Transpose Tool again. I'm just going to rotate this a little bit actually. It's not perfect, but not a big deal. You know, I'd probably want to smooth out these areas, that kind of thing. But if I want to get this done in an hour, I'm going to take a few liberties today. The important part is when you go back here, hey, you get a little shadow fall off. That's all I'm concerned about right now. And I apologize, this I don't have my Wacom set up exactly how I have it at home, so I keep hitting the wrong hotkeys. Alright, so going back to our subtools, now if we look at these together, we have something that's coming together pretty nice. Maybe this is coming out a little bit further, but I can live with it. Final thing that I might do is it looks like for this top back piece here we have a little extra level. So let's select that one. And we already got it selected. And I'm going to do a mask here, invert my mask, add a little bit more on the side. Transpose Tool. Just move that out. Cool. Okay, so now that we got these three pieces together, I want to actually combine them all down into one tool. So if you come down here into merge mode, you're going to say merge down. I'm going to say always okay, merge down again. Now we have this all as one piece. Cool thing about that is now you can start sculpting on it, do whatever you want, and it'll stay together kind of nicely, which is what we want. We want it to feel like the same piece. However, if you come up here, you'll notice that it starts to separate. That's because it's not technically welded together. So what I like to do is use the Dynamesh feature underneath the geometry. I'm going to close this, clean it up a bit right here. And let's just run it. It's a little bit, not enough Cheeto, so let's turn this up. Yeah, that's closer. Let's say it's good enough for now. And then now if we run this and we need to do damage or smooth it out, it's actually welded together. And that's good because, you know, at this point I might want to have it feel like it is actually welded together, like someone soldered stuff in here and all that kind of thing. So that's pretty useful. So we're just going to keep that by itself for now. Let's move on to another piece. So in the end, what we're going to do is we're going to take this thing, we're going to duplicate it around 6 times. It's going to make the 6 sides of all my lantern. But of course we need a base too, and we also need a lid. So let's switch gears a minute, because the lid's going to be similar technique to this. What I want to show you here on the base is how you can do a lot of cool stuff with Transpose Tools. So we have that one selected. Obviously we need this a little bit bigger, because you saw that lantern was actually larger than that. So I'm going to come down once again to my Deformation Tools and use this. I'm going to switch to my X and Y here. I'm going to scale this up a bit. So now we have a little bit of a lip to it, which is cool. One thing I'm going to do real fast too is I'm just going to take a visual look at this. You can see that we have one level here, another level kind of comes in a bit, and then we have another smaller level at the bottom. I'm not going to be using the see-through mode too much on this. I'm just going to remember this and quickly move through this. So what we need to do first is we need to make a poly group for the areas that we want to extrude. So I'm going to click this to mask this, Control W, and then now with the Shift F you can see that we have actually a different poly group on the bottom that's represented by this different color. And now I'm going to switch to my Transpose tool up again. You can just click these if you want. Click here. And this is kind of nice. It's such low poly at the moment that it's going to click right to my center, and I'm going to use this to my advantage. If I was to come in here right now and just click this and move it, you'll see it's moving my whole thing because I haven't isolated a group. One cool trick with the Transpose tools is if you click on a poly group, control click, you'll see it actually masks out the other areas. This is super handy for selecting different stuff throughout your asset as you work on things. Trust me, you gotta use this. And if you guys need a good, more in-depth demo of the Transpose tools, Michael Pavlovich did a really awesome thing on the Z Classroom. So be sure to check that out. So let's click back in the center. And now we can isolate just that poly group. But I want to make sure it's isolated one axis, so Shift and clicking this. Let's Control Shift again, mask this middle section, Shift, click, and then it's isolated just up and down, which is what I want. But also too, I need to actually extrude this thing down. So I'm going to go to our scale mode, and here in the middle, if you do a Control Shift and then you click, you're actually going to be able to extrude this. So that's what I want. And now I'm going to move it down, and once again I'm going to Control Shift click, and that's going to allow me to extrude again. I'm going to look at the front. This feels about right to me. I'm going to move to my scale mode. Kind of scale that down just a bit. I'm still liking that. So let's make the larger portion of the base here. Going to our scale thing again, Control Shift click. Making sure it's on the center. We got that. Move. I'll just go through the steps now without talking through it. So I've been in the CG industry, I guess now for about 13 years total. I started back in 2001 at Blizzard Entertainment, and I mean, that was my dream job, and it still is. And the only other place I'd honestly really wanted to work was at Square Enix in Tokyo. And I remember playing Final Fantasy I a long time ago as a kid, and I would always finish the game and you'd see all the names and Japanese credits, and I could never say them, and I wanted my name to be in there one day. So I was a Blizzard for about 3 years, and then I actually taught myself Japanese as best as I could, and met some people at SIGGRAPH, and in 2003 I went to work at Tokyo at Square Enix. Had a really good experience there, and worked on Final Fantasy Advent Children's cinematics as well as Final Fantasy 12, and eventually came back to Blizzard. So now we have a nice base here for what we want. I think this is going to be just fine for what we need. I'm going to go in and start sculpting some of the additional details. Before I do that, I want to show you another cool thing that we can do. Let's give this some subdivisions first. And actually, you know what? Let's just Dynamesh this. You can see the resolution's a little bit too low here. I want to keep these edges crisp. Let's try this. That looks good enough for me. Not perfect, but I don't want to go too heavy. So what I'm going to make next is, see these little sides here, these rivets that come up? I want to quickly make those. So I'm going to use a masking tool again. And this works, but we need to turn on our symmetry. This is where Radial Symmetry comes into place. This is awesome if you guys haven't used it. So activate symmetry again. This R down here will do your Radial Symmetry. Now we have this really cool looking kaleidoscope thing you can do, and that's pretty fun just doing that by itself. So we have 6 sides of this, and I want to be able to make 6 masks. This is set to a default of 8. So if you come in here, radial count, we'll switch that to 6, or whatever number you want, and now we can have that exact section that we need. And I'm going to go ahead and make a control mask for these different areas that we need that we're going to extrude up. Switch back to my Lasso Tool here. It's a little bit too big. It's not going to be perfect, but let's go ahead and use it. Control Shift click this. Sharpen our mask a bit here. And then once again we would want to do the Control W, but take a look down here real quick. It comes through sometimes, so I'm just going to quickly deselect this. And Control W for my new poly group, and you can see that we have that in there now. But the problem is these edges are not as smooth as I would like for the extrusion I'm going to do, so I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to come down here underneath the really this polygroups tools. You'll see here that there's a group mask function. Take that and just pump this polish all the way up. And now when I group this, you can see that it actually smooths out the edges here.
You have to make
next thing I want to do is I'm going to extrude this up. And before I extrude it, I'll just show you what happens by default. If we were just kind of move this up, you can see that you're getting all this faceting on the side. That's once again where you want to use the Control Shift click on the middle. I'm going to hold the Shift key.
So grab, let's just say,
so that it comes straight up. Normally I'd have that looking a lot smoother, but I can live with that, because in the end I can smooth that out pretty quickly. So now you can see we have some little edges that are going to work with the piece that we have going on here. It's not completely centered, and that's okay for now. So let's switch back to this one before we do detail down here. Showing this subtool on the base. The cool thing about this is since it started from a cylinder, the center of the world axis is still at the middle here, so if we want to make a duplicate of this, which I just did with Control Shift D, let's minimize some of these. And if I wanted to rotate this now, you can see that actually it still keeps our section here, so really quickly we can make our different edges. And I like to go as exact as I can. So I'm just going to numerically do 60, because 360 degrees divided by 6 is going to be 60. Let's Control Shift E to duplicate that one more time. And rotate one more time. This thing's a little finicky sometimes. I think maybe I'm just doing this wrong. You know what? Let's just eyeball it.
Right there's the top. So what I can do is go to here and deformations, follow my feature, and run that, and it'll start.
I'm going to merge similar this time, and then it knows to merge all these together. And Control-Shift-E to duplicate these one more time. And this time I'll see if I can do it by 180. I suck at this today. Let's just do it by hand.
I love that. That's it. I really appreciate your time.
No worries. Happy to help out.
I'll be here tomorrow.
Okay, I'm up next.
Once again, not perfect, but it's getting lined up kind of the way I want it. So you get an idea of how quickly, with the initialize tools and all those, you can just straight out ZBrush, use all your cylinders, everything else, and get some cool base forms. So let's go back to our original base piece here. And since I've still got my radial symmetry on with this, I can smooth out some of these mistakes I didn't like really quick. After I Dynamesh it. Dynamesh is still active on this, so Control, click, drag. So a second ago I didn't have any topology in here, it's just one stretched out mesh. So now I've actually got topology that's going through here. And making sure my symmetry is on, I can just come through here and smooth that out a bit to get rid of that mistake we had a second ago. And let's go ahead and take a look at our piece again here. Looks like we have some interesting kind of shapes going on. So let's just make some of these. First off, maybe we'll make that little design that was on the bottom. And I'm going to turn my, no, 6 is good. Let's just check this out. So let's just do some of this. Make some little flower looking thing. Control-Shift click this, sharpen this. I'm going to invert this now. And I'm going to go to our Transpose Tools. Because I'm in Dynamesh, I'm just not concerned about my topology looking bad when I move these around. All those edges, not worried about it because it's going to look good when I re-Dynamesh it.